Thank you all very much. It's a great honor to be here with our Hong Kong Foundation. Even though I'm not from Hong Kong, I feel like I'm part of our Hong Kong being here. It's a great pleasure to be back in Hong Kong. And I'm going to speak from the point of view of an academic and the role of scholarship and academic exchange. This is my first time, really only my second time back in Hong Kong in the last 3 years. I used to go to China and Hong Kong 6 or 8 times a year. And in these last 3 years, as we know, so much has changed. So little, seemingly, collaboration, for example, between American universities and the universities in Greater China because of COVID. So little cooperation, sadly, between our two countries. So much has been lost. The single motivating purpose of my being here again, just last week in Shanghai and then above all this week in Hong Kong, is to restart my own university's engagement, Harvard's engagement with Greater China, with the great educational partners that we have had and that we will have again in the world of Greater China. I love Hong Kong, and I love its institutions of higher learning. I had the honor of serving for 10 years on the UGC and the University Grants Committee, watching and advising as Hong Kong's universities expanded their reach internationally and also to the Chinese mainland, watching them as they introduced extraordinary new programs in liberal arts education as the universities went to 4-year programs. I had the pleasure of serving on governance review committees for Hong Kong University, on the Center for Chinese Studies Board at Zhongwen Daxue, and I have the great honor of being an honorary doctorate recipient from 2 remarkable institutions, Hong Kong PolyU and Hong Kong Baptist Universities. So I feel, as a scholar, truly home here in Hong Kong. Now, these last 3 years have been insulating and isolating for all of us. This is why we must re-engage. Now, some people will say, on both sides of the Pacific, do we really need to re-engage in collaborative research, writing, and teaching? After all, our countries are seemingly at odds in various ways, and American universities, well, for the moment, they still rank reasonably well in the world, and some in China say, well, China should pursue a 中国特色的教育. But whoever argues this simply does not know the world of universities. The book that I have recently written called The Empires of Ideas, Creating the Modern University from Germany to America to China, shows how great national systems of universities, first in Europe, then in North America, but also here in East Asia, in the world of Greater China, have changed the world. And that is why one thinks, for example, the need to ensure that our own engagement, for example, the engagement of my own university here in Greater China, is so important, because nowhere in the world is there more of the best human capital than there is here in Hong Kong and in the Chinese mainland. Nowhere in the world is there a greater commitment to higher education. I witnessed it here in Hong Kong, and no place in the world is spending more and investing more in the future of higher education than the Chinese mainland. Right before COVID, I had the honor of accompanying Harvard's president, Larry Bacow, to Beijing, where we went with President Xi Jinping. And President Xi made it very clear to us that he wanted more, not less, engagement academically with the United States, that he sought to send more, not fewer, students to the United States. He told us that he had told President Trump, if you limit the number of Chinese students going to the United States, you are doing a great favor for Europe. And he's not wrong in that regard. President Xi believes very strongly in the engagement of our institutions across the Pacific, and he has been and will be, I'm sure, as the leadership here in Hong Kong has been and will be, a strong supporter of our renewed educational exchange. The big question that I ask in my book, since the Germans led the universities, the world of universities in the 19th century, and the Americans had a pretty good 20th century, can China lead? And here I mean Greater China, with Hong Kong in some sense in the vanguard. Can China lead the world of universities? The answer, of course, is yes, but not alone. Because the great universities here in Hong Kong, like those in Beijing or in Nanjing or in Guangzhou, they have grown up in partnership with the great universities of Europe and North America. That's the company they have grown up with. That's the company they want to keep. And that is the company that in time they may lead. When one thinks of why this is important, finally, and let me conclude with this, what actually makes a country great, or a great international city like Hong Kong great? Is it the size of an army? Is it the size of an economy? Or is it the power of ideas and the institutions that create ideas? In the year 1936, on the 300th anniversary of Harvard University, we had a big celebration at our commencement, and Professor Hu Shi from Beida, from Beijing Daxue, came as China's representative to Harvard's 300th anniversary. And he was given an honorary degree. And those of you who have been to the Harvard campus will know that he also dedicated a stele, a shibei, in his calligraphy that sits next to our great Widener Library today. And here is what Hu Shi wrote about the centrality of learning for the making of nations. He wrote this: culture, he wrote it in Chinese, I should tell you, but I'm giving it to you in English. And he wrote it in wonderful classical Chinese, very difficult. He said, culture is the lifeblood of a nation. It is by virtue of its culture that a nation arrives. But truly it is due to learning, 学, that a culture flourishes. Intellectuals with deep knowledge and far-sighted vision understand that in establishing a solid foundation for their nation, the utmost priority must be given to the enhancement of learning. This is something that we believe very strongly at Harvard and in the United States, and very happily, I know, is believed very strongly here in Hong Kong. And that is why I must excuse myself right now to go and give a lecture in 20 minutes at the University of Hong Kong. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Sawadee krap. It's a little bit intimidating, to tell the truth, to be speaking in such a high-power forum, and quite a few heavyweight speakers. And I don't consider myself at all in the league of Mr. Ronnie Chan. Yeah. But I'd like to thank the organizers, the Hong Kong Foundation and the Hong Kong ASEAN Foundation, for organizing this event. It gives me an opportunity to come back to Hong Kong. I served as Consul General here in Hong Kong long time ago, 2000 to 2002. And, I have many fond memories, of course, but of course Hong Kong has changed. But in a very real sense, I think Hong Kong has not changed. Hong Kong still remains as vibrant, resilient, and as dynamic as ever, especially now with the lifting of all the restrictions. So I have, as someone who is familiar with Hong Kong, I have great confidence in Hong Kong. I also wanted to take this opportunity to pay a special tribute to my good friend, Kun Bernard Chan. If you try to think of anyone who has contributed so much to the relationship between Thailand and Hong Kong, I think that person is Khun Bernard Chan, because of his family ties, as you all know, but also because of his efforts through the years. Now, this conference, I think, is important. It's timely, because you don't hear the word collaboration so much these days. You don't hear the word connecting. You hear the word conflict and confrontation, and you hear the word decoupling so much, And I think really we're going down a very dangerous path, and somehow, we really have to pursue another path that leads to collaboration and reconnecting and enhancing our connection. What I wanted to do today is to share my thoughts, the perspective of someone from Thailand, from Southeast Asia, on the themes of this conference. On first, Hong Kong connecting the world. Second, the future. What is the future? The third, where are the new opportunities? And fourth, how do we collaborate for growth? I don't have any, magic formula, but I do have some ideas. On connecting the world, I think the role of Hong Kong is obvious, the role of being the gateway to China and the gateway to the world. And the strength of Hong Kong, I think we've all heard, a financial center, a hub for trade, aviation, logistics. But to me, I think what makes Hong Kong stand out is that Hong Kong is not just a city in China. It is a city with an international character, an international outreach, and an international outlook, operating on the basis of international standards. So I think that's what's important. Second, you have all these strengths, definitely, but I think the most important strength that Hong Kong has is the people of Hong Kong, the talents of the people of Hong Kong, the drive of the people of Hong Kong, and the dynamism of the people of Hong Kong, the can-do attitude. I think that's very important. And I am confident in the future of Hong Kong for another reason, because Hong Kong keeps evolving, keeps changing with the times. You are developing, you're reinforcing your core strengths, but you're also developing new strengths. Now you're concentrating on developing innovation, technology. You're into the digital economy, into fintech, green finance, and you're developing homegrown talents while recruiting talent from abroad. And from my perspective of Southeast Asia, another strength of Hong Kong is that you are at the heart of the GBA, the Greater Bay Area, and you are actually the driving force. And if you look at the GBA, it is the highest growth area in China, and taken together, it's one of the largest economies in the region, if not in the world. So I have great confidence in Hong Kong playing the role of the connector. But then what about the future? The future. I think the future is in Asia. And I think Asia is the future. The world has gone through a very profound transformative change. That change is the shift in the global balance of power from the West to the East. And Asia has risen. Asia is rising. They talk about the Asian century. But I think we have to be careful also, because it's not preordained. We have to be able to safeguard our peace in order to maintain our prosperity. But no doubt about it, China will lead the way. China will be the engine of growth in the region. I just came back from India. India will be the fastest growing economy in the region. And then, of course, you have Japan and the Republic of Korea. They will continue to contribute to the region's growth and dynamism. But my concern is the geopolitical challenge that we face. How are we going to face or navigate these challenges together? And I think this is something that we have to think seriously about. But of course, Asia is the future. But where are the new opportunities? I think, and not being biased towards my region, but I think Southeast Asia is where the action is. The 10 countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Kun Bernard told me that he's been working for so many years to get people to pay attention to ASEAN. But I think that attention is being paid now. When I was ambassador to France, even France talked about the rise of Asia. And in that context, they talk about China, of course, talk about India. Then they talk about the rise of ASEAN. So I think ASEAN is where the new opportunities are. Why? Because we are collectively, I don't know whether you know this, the 5th largest economy in the world. And by the year 2030, we will be the 4th largest economy in the world. And ASEAN is an economic community. That means that we are a single market. We're striving towards a single production base. The size of the market is 680 million people. 800 million people with rising middle class, rising standards of living, rising purchasing power, and rising needs for consumption. And our economies are not sitting still. We're in the process of restructuring, reforming. In Thailand, we have to go towards more advanced technology. We have to go towards R&D. Otherwise, we will be where we are, stuck in the middle income trap, where we've been for about almost 20 years now. And so these developments, they represent investment opportunities, whether in industry, in finance, or infrastructure. Do you know how much infrastructure we need annually up to the year 2030? $1.7 trillion US. So this will have to come through investment. We have to mobilize financing, international financing. So I think this is a role that Hong Kong can play, and these are the new opportunities for Hong Kong. And I think the question here is, how do we collaborate to maintain growth? When we talk about collaboration, I think it's about enhanced partnership first. Second is about creating synergies together. Third is about thinking regionally. And the way to go is towards economic integration in our region, broader economic integration. We talk about free trade areas. We need more of them. This will increase the size of the pie for all. And a good example of economic integration, and that was mentioned in the opening remarks, is what we call the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, comprising 15 countries. The 10 countries of ASEAN, plus China, Japan, the ROK, Australia, and New Zealand. India was very much involved in the negotiation, but decided to opt out at the end. And we hope India will be joining soon. But the RCEP represents 30% of the global GDP. So that's very important. And not only RCEP, we also have this high standard trade agreement, the CPTPP, the comprehensive, very long name, Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. And this comprised 11 countries on both sides of the Pacific Rim. And China is applying to join. I hope that can be completed soon. Even the UK is joining the bandwagon as well. So I think economic integration will create new opportunities for prosperity, for collaboration in the region. The point that I'd like to make, and this is a point that we think a lot about in Thailand, about growth. Growth. The saying that we have in Thailand is, leave no one behind. So growth for us is not just about growth rates. It shouldn't be. We have to think about the quality of growth. You know, whether it enhances the well-being of our people. We have to think about human security, human development along with growth. And so I think what we should strive towards is sustainable growth, growth that is equitable, growth that doesn't damage the environment, growth that leads to carbon neutrality, growth that achieves the so-called SDG. Because we have to, the goal is 2030. Right now, many countries are far behind from achieving the SDGs. I think the final issue that I'd like to comment on, and I think this is probably the overarching issue for all of us, is that we cannot collaborate for growth. We cannot create new opportunities if we don't have a peaceful and stable global and regional order. And these days, you know, the world is becoming more fragmented, more divided. And the talk is that, you know, the world is being divided between friends and foe. And I don't think this is the way that we should go. And how do we navigate these challenges? So I think that we really have to think of ourselves as a community, trying to find common grounds, common cause, and a sense of community, as I said. And I think if we can't do that, what we need to do is, as in the theme of this conference, we need to connect, we need to shape a common future together, we need to find new opportunities for collaboration, and most of all, we have to think in terms of our common peace and prosperity. So thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Bernard. Great for the invitation. Frankly, I'm very, very surprised that I was invited. Because I'm an outsider. I'm never an insider by choice. I never like to be on the inside, and I've never been. And I can see a lot of insiders here. I said, why not Vincent Lo? Why not Moses Chang? Why not Alan Zeman? Why not Elsie Leung? Why me? I am truly baffled. Just to show you how much I'm an outsider, I have never met Madame Lu Xinling. Well, I've met her, but nothing more than shake her hand and said, my name is Ronnie Chan, because she probably doesn't know who I am. And the only time I have anything to say to her is right now, but she left already. I wanted to tell her that I think she looked a lot nicer, smarter, and prettier than the photograph that was shown of her there. And if I had said that to her, that would have been the first sentence I've ever spoken to her. So I have no idea why I'm invited here, Bernard. I think your staff went cuckoo. But whatever it is, when called upon, I have no choice. I serve on the board of our Hong Kong Foundation. And so let me just present a few thoughts as a Hong Konger. I'm the first at least, non-Hong Kong government official speaking here today. And so there will be more. Lawrence, you'll be next. But so I represent in some way the average man on the street in Hong Kong. Over the last 20-some years, I've been repeatedly thinking one problem, one issue, one question, and that is, what is one country, two system? Does it work? Can it work? And how does it work? And that question has troubled me for many years, especially since 2014, when we had the streets, the yellow umbrella, and then later 2019 with the black coats, the riots. And I came to the conclusion that every one of us back in 1997 had our own imagination of what one country, two system may be. But since mankind has hardly ever seen it, nobody really knows what it ought to be like and what it can be like. And so it is a new thing to all of us according to each of our different imaginations. Moreover, one country, two systems, just like any other human system of government, must evolve over time. They cannot be static. And so whatever your imagination was 27 years ago in 1997, 26 years ago, maybe times have changed. That necessitates your review of your construct, your mental construct of what the one country, two system is. So if we were to see one country system evolving, we should not be surprised. It is a natural course of happenings, not to mention that whatever you imagine or I imagine it to be is nothing more than what you imagine and what I imagine. And so I'm glad that, in a sense, Hong Kong has been evolving in this regard. Now, obviously, there are a lot of happenings in the last 26 years that necessitated a lot of changes. And so let me first examine what have changed. If we don't know what have changed, we don't know what needs to be changed today in order to tailor to a changing world that is around us. I say there are three areas of changes. First, Hong Kong has changed. Number two, our relationship with the motherland, mainland China, has changed. And number three, and perhaps the most significantly, the world around us have changed. Hong Kong, how Hong Kong has changed? Well, we never had NSL, the National Security Law. Do you support the NSL? I have no choice but to support the NSL. I don't want the riot that was there in 2019 that was so violent. I grew up here in this town. I've never been feared on the streets of Hong Kong like in 2019. As I drove home one day, my driver refused to let me drive home. One day I snuck out and drove home, and I regretted it. So national security law is a necessity, that's all. And by the way, the Hong Kong police were so restrained. I'm so proud of them. But whatever it is, what is on the street is what is on the street. And with that, there's no choice but to have NSL. And so be it. But once you have it, Hong Kong has changed. And changed forever. You cannot turn the clock back. And the change, I only regret that we had gotten to ourselves to a position we had no choice but after NSL. That is a nuclear option. You can only use it once, and you can never use it and say that you have never used it. And so I regret that we have gotten to a point where we had to use it, but once we got to the point, we have no choice but to use it, and so be it. I'm a business guy. I'm pragmatic. I need to do business. I need to do what it takes to survive as a business enterprise. So Hong Kong has changed, and not necessarily to the worse. I don't like all the political infighting of the last 26 years. I'm very happy today that we can now finally get back to business. When was it? 2002, during the Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush US presidential election, Clinton said something very famous. He said, "Is the economy stupid?" And people try to analyze Hong Kong and give it all kinds of explanation. I said, "It's politics, stupid." It's as simple as that. And the NSL will enable us to return to the economy. For that, I'm grateful. The second thing is that Hong Kong's relationship with the mainland of necessity has also changed. Remember the then President Jiang Zemin says? He said, let Hong Kong be Hong Kong, let mainland be mainland. 河水不犯井水. Let's just not invade on each other's territory. Hong Kong tried. Some people in Hong Kong, unfortunately, tried that, and it cannot end well. And that's dragged the rest of us into the pit. So the relationship of Hong Kong and the mainland will have to change as well. But I, for one, do not believe for a moment that it is cast in stone what that relationship ought to be moving forward. I don't believe that Beijing wanted it to be set in stone either. As long as we respect the bottom lines, 底线, then the rest is okay. And so it is up to we, Hong Kong people, up to us, to define partly what that relationship is and work with Beijing to find out what that relationship ought to be. But that which worries me the most is the third area that have changed, and that is the world around us have changed. In particular, U.S.-China relationship have changed. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the following. 1841, when the Brits took over Hong Kong. Hong Kong has, ever since that time until 2020, part of the international community. Initially, because Britain was a major player in the world, so Hong Kong, being a colony of Britain, was protected under that. And we were part of the world community of players. All the way, even after 1997, the rest of the world basically accepted one country, two system, and they should, because it is true, it is real, and we were okay. Until 2020, roughly, after the riots of 2019 and the NSL of 2020, the rest of the world, led by the United States, decided to yank Hong Kong out of the international community and lump it together with the rest of mainland China. Interestingly, the rest of mainland China is striving hard to be part of the international arena in almost every area of human endeavor. Yet if the number one country in the world, the United States, wants you out, it is not a fun thing to be. And so I see Hong Kong being yanked away from the international community, beginning with academic exchange, then with specific products, and then with people exchange, and then finally, perhaps, well, I should take away the word perhaps, even with capital exchange. And so in those four areas, Hong Kong will come under increasing pressure from the international arena. It will do well for Hong Kong to recognize the time and preserve ourselves, protect ourselves accordingly. We can only rely on two things. Number one, when some people hurt Hong Kong, it may end up hurting themselves even more. But no one can prevent a nation from hurting others by hurting themselves even more. And it is known to have done that over and over again. When the Russian US dollar accounts are frozen, who gets hurt the most? I came to the conclusion the one who gets hurt the most, and many people increasingly agree with me, is the US dollar. And when US dollar is hurt, who gets hurt the most? So these are hard geopolitical facts that Hong Kong is facing, and we will do well to recognize them and prepare ourselves accordingly. And these are not things that Hong Kong alone can handle. These are international affairs. These are areas that Hong Kong has to work closely with Beijing in order to have a hope to protect ourselves. So my last point is the following. Where is Hong Kong's economic future? I happen to believe that Hong Kong's economic future is fine. I don't know if we will thrive in the old days of growing at 7-8% per annum. I don't know about that. But if we grow at 3% per annum for the next 10, 20 years, it's not the end of the world. So I don't think that Hong Kong's economy is doomed. No, for not a moment. I just wrote in my letter to shareholders that my company has no intention to leave Hong Kong as a headquarters because we think this is still the best place for us to do business. And we have all intention to stay here, although our income will increasingly come from the mainland of China. Why not? If that's where the money is, that's where the money is. But we have no intention to leave Hong Kong. So where are the opportunities for Hong Kong? Number one, like it or not, and I've been saying this for the last 25 years, just like Hong Kong people seem to be deaf. But I think that now I may have a little bit more welcoming ears. And that is, Hong Kong's economic future must be the mainland of China. It doesn't mean that we will replace our relationship with the rest of the world. I still travel 70% of the time outside of the mainland of China. I'm still in America every month. I'm still in Europe every other month or more. In the Middle East, Southeast Asia, I'm there all the time. Because that's where the opportunities are, and that's what will serve Hong Kong well. However, if Hong Kong people does not know to connect more tightly economically with the mainland of China, then sorry, Hong Kong does not deserve to thrive. Hong Kong is privileged to be on the footstep of the mainland of China. And as Lee Kuan Yew, someone who I respect tremendously said, there's one thing he admires in Hong Kong, and that is our geography. And if we don't appreciate ourselves and take advantage of it, who is there to blame but ourselves? So like it or not, Hong Kong's future, economic future, is inextricably tied to that of mainland China while keeping relationship with the rest of the world. In the past, there were ideological barriers on the parts of many that want to keep Hong Kong economically away from the mainland of China. There were such dumb people in Hong Kong in the last 26 years, including surrounding Mr. C.H. Tung when he was the chief executive of Hong Kong. Thank God those people are now out of the window. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, that we should get back to the basics, where the money is. Somebody asks a bank robber, we're not a bank robber in Hong Kong, we're really good people here. Some people ask a bank robber in America, he said, why do you rob a bank? He said, well, that's where the money is. And he said, why do you want to go into mainland China? I said, that's where the money is. Just as long as you make it legally and properly, why not? And so I think that Hong Kong, our future, no doubt, our economic future is tied to that of the mainland China while preserving our connectivity with the rest of the world. However, the connectivity with the rest of the world may also change. For example, today, America doesn't welcome Hong Kong because they don't welcome mainland China. They're not against us per se, but like it or not, your peripheral damage is absolutely true. You disagree, I'll be happy to buy you lunch. I'm a business guy. Anyway, so markets have to change. Connections have to change. Even industries have to change. We have to develop new areas of expertise. We have to develop new businesses, new connections, new relationships around the world in order to keep ourselves economically vibrant. The second area, of course, is technology. Like it or not, the last 20, 30 years since Hong Kong's return to the mainland of China was the time that mainland Chinese technology took off. And Hong Kong has been left behind to a good extent. Several reasons. Some people say land is too expensive. That's true, but land price is coming down. There's no successful model. That's true, but they are coming. I know some of them. Our universities are very good. And finally, I think the ability for us to bring scientific research into commercialization is good. Finally, people say Hong Kong's market is small. I say, true. But why should Hong Kong be your market? Why should the world not be your market? Why should Southeast Asia not be your market? Why should mainland China not be your market? So my last advice to Hong Kong people is, don't think Hong Kong. That's a sure way to not make a lot of money. Think China, including Hong Kong, of course. Think the region, and think the world. Broaden yourself. So my last thinky little suggestion. In the 1950s and 60s when I grew up, in Hong Kong, apart from English, what language was the most revered? If you speak that language, people bow to you. What is that? 1950s and 60s. Shanghai-hua, Shanghainese. 20 years later, in the 1970s, they were replaced by the Cantonese because their children all speak Cantonese, right? But in the 1990s, I began to hear 普通话, first in Taiwan and in South Geiwan or somewhere. And then 10 years later, it moved to North Point, it moved to Causeway Bay, and then it moved to Wan Chai. In the last 10, 15 years, it's all over the place. In fact, these guys are better educated than the average Hong Kong. They're more wealthy than the average Hong Kong. So, hey, why are you against them? Well, we're not against them. We just have a problem. Our 普通话 is not that good. So I suggest that Hong Kong people better get out of your butt and start speaking Mandarin or 普通话 for business purposes. At home, sure, Cantonese is great. If I curse you, haven't begun with the 18th generation, I haven't started yet. That's a Cantonese. But leave it to the home for business, for academia, for schooling. I suggest that we speak 普通话, blend with those new Hong Kongers. I don't know the number of it, it's a lot of it. As a businessman, how to maximize the return on asset is important. And we have so many 普通话 people in the last 20 years who have come to Hong Kong that are great asset to Hong Kong. Let's make sure that our return on asset is very high by taking advantage of them, blending with them, welcoming them into our society, making them part of us. Hong Kong will do well. Thank you.